You got your mic on? Nope. You're live.
Right. Okay, good. Good morning. All right. Okay, get everything ready. All right, good morning. We're back for Sew Together Tuesday. Glad you guys are back with us. If you've been here before, give me a little like. I'm really excited that people keep coming back and visiting more, and we're going to be here every week until this whole quarantine thing is over. So I'm glad, we're becoming fast friends. So if you haven't joined us before, it's Sew Together Tuesday. I'm Teresa Coates. I'm the National Educator for Shannon Fabrics, and we are doing this every week, gathering together and doing a little sewing. So basically, you're going to join me in my studio. Today we're going to make a Cuddle strip quilt. So if you haven't been to one of my classes, or if you have, we're totally going to talk about how we put these things together, and we're going to do a little bit bigger one, okay? I'm going to get my coffee out of the way because that's dangerous. One fell swoop and we're in trouble there. Okay, so usually I do this in a classroom, and I really want to know who's bought a kit. I always have people put their hand up. So if you could do a little like or something, let me know how many of you have bought kits and have just let them sit there. It happens a lot that people buy the kits and then they don't really know what to do with them, so they sit in their stash or in the closet. And every once in a while they'll pull them out, pet them, and then put them back. This happens a lot. And so today we're going to talk about how to put them together. So normally in a class, when we do this, I do the little kits. And today we're going to do a little bit bigger one. So if you're just joining us, make sure that you leave a comment with your city and state. Tell us where you're at. At the end of this, we'll do a little giveaway. We're going to give away a kit of this size. And so it may be one that is the same one. It may be one that's a little bit different, but it's going to be this size of a quilt kit. Okay? So this class is one of the most favorite ones that we have when I go out and actually teach at shops. So I'm kind of excited to be able to teach it here today. We're going to start with one that's called the Bambino size. So we have various different sizes of quilts. Okay, so the one that we usually teach in stores is a small little 27-inch quilt. And it's great because it doesn't take a lot of space, and we can all work together to make this little kit. But people often want to make bigger ones. So today we're going to make one that's the next size up, that's Bambino, okay? And it is basically about 28 by 38, I think. I'll look at the box and see what it tells you it's supposed to be, okay? So that is this guy, all right? This kit right here, okay? I'm going to check and see the box. Yep, 28 by 37, okay? And so this size is the Bambino size. We go up much larger, and we're going to do some bigger quilts down the road. So if you're interested in doing the really big ones, they're called Crazy 8s. So that size, that's the biggest one that we have, and I'm thinking about doing one of those classes down the road too. If we're stuck here long enough, that's totally what we're going to do. So this is the guy that we're going to make today. We have a whole bunch of things, so let me talk first about the kit. Okay, so if you have bought one of these kits, this is our new box. I'm going to take the plastic off of here so we don't get any weird shine happening. Okay, so this is our box. You may have, excuse me, you may have seen the older boxes that we have that are like skinny long ones, and we did those for years. We had these long skinny boxes that you would see all the fabrics lined up like this and be like this size. But we really like this new design because it lets you see a bigger swath of fabric, so you can see the print a little bit better. Okay, and then we also have a whole bunch of information on here. Okay, so what I want you to do is when you're buying kits is to make sure and look at the back and get some extra information. So this is the name of the kit right here. Okay, and it tells you that it's the complete kit, which includes everything for the strips, the backing, the binding, and the pattern. All right, tells you how big it's going to be. And then the important part, and so this is your size, so this is a Cuddle Kit Bambino, so we know what size it is, basically that same idea. And then this is our backing fabric, okay? And this tells you what it is. It's Marble Luxe Cuddle in salt water. All right, that's this one right here. You can see it's a crazy thick, yummy fabric. All right, this is a really lovely luxe cuddle that we have. So if you have watched any of the other videos and we've talked about the kinds of cuddle that we have, this is one of the longer nap ones. And so it's really sort of dense and yummy. We're going to talk about using different cuddle backings for things, but I want to show you why that's important information to know. It's because if I reach up here, and does this sound better today, guys? If we did a different microphone today because there was issues yesterday. So let me know if there are issues today. I'm going to take this out. Crackle, crackle. Okay, so this is a different one. This is our Fab 5. This is this kit. If you look at the back of this one, it tells you suggested backing fabric and gives you 3 colors. Okay, that means the backing fabric isn't in here and you need to buy some. It tells you here that you need 1 1/8 yards. I'll tell you to buy 1.5 yards just so that you can do some different variations. 1 1/8 yards will give you exactly this layout, but if you didn't want to do this layout, you could actually make it larger. Okay, but these colors all work with our Cuddle 3, so our solid cuddle, the solid cuddles, just the plain ones, like, there we go, like these guys. These are all Cuddle 3s. Okay, so it's just the plain fabric, nothing exciting except the color. It's beautiful, but they're really simple. Okay, but so these are all colors, they match with those Cuddle 3s. But what I'll tell you, and this is the secret that I've learned from watching 1,000 women make quilts now, is that you should use one of these type of fabrics instead. So use a luxe cuddle. Okay, use a luxe cuddle. Use the rose cuddle is great. The hide is great. Anything that has some depth to it will actually hide all your stitches. So I'm going to show you really quick the difference. So this one is done with this hide, or the sorry, this is the marble. Okay, you can see the stitching lines just a little bit here. Okay, your other alternative is to use a print, which will sort of hide the stitches a little bit because you're distracted by the print, but you can still see. So I'm going to show you here. We don't all get it right. You see this big curve right there? Okay, on this side, totally fine. Can't even tell. This side, I can see it. In here, I can't see if those things are curvy or not. All right, it totally hides in there. If you do it on the Cuddle 3, you get to see all of the stitches, okay? So you can see this, you can see just how straight these lines are, which I'm very proud of. I worked really hard to get those lines straight, but if they wobble at all, you can totally see it. Okay, so I might need my coffee back. So the difference is this, you can see all the stitches. This one, it hides it a little bit by distracting you with the print, and the luxe cuddles will totally hide your stitches, so you almost can't see them. All right, so when you're getting a kit like the larger ones that don't come with the backing, and you know, because it will give you suggested backing fabric choices, you want to choose something with a little bit of fluff to hide all your little not quite straight lines. Okay, so that's my recommendation. It's a little inside tip on choosing a backing fabric. All of our smaller kits will come with a backing on it, and it's one that we've chosen that will work pretty well for you, and it'll either be a luxe cuddle or it'll be a print that'll sort of hide the stitches as well. Okay, and if you have any questions about this, please ask away. Hawk is here with me. We're in quarantine together, and he will share your comments and questions with me. So this is what we're making today. Okay, so today we're going to make the front of the quilt, and then tomorrow we'll bind it. And when I say the front, we're really making the whole quilt. I just throw things. Okay, so let's look at the kit. So I'm going to put this one back because we're going to do this one later maybe. Let me know if you want to make a big Fab 5. Okay, so this is the one that we're going to make. So I'm going to open this up and show you. Also on the back of this, it'll tell you, and we're going to talk about it a little bit, what is Cuddle, the recommended notions, and we're going to go through these, what we do, and then some tips and care instructions on how to take care of it, how to wash it, and how to use some of the bits, okay, that we're going to talk about. There's way more tips that I'll give you today, and then how to minimize Cuddle confetti. I like to call it Cuddle dust, but whatever you call it, you're going to want to get rid of it by putting it in your dryer. So I'm lucky enough to live in an apartment that doesn't have a washer and dryer, so I don't get to use the dryer trick at home, so we're just going to shake it. But if you are at home, what you're going to do is you're going to cut all of your pieces, then throw them in the dryer with a wet washcloth, let it tumble around, get rid of all of your Cuddle dust, and then start sewing, okay? Okay. So in our box here, we've got a bunch of different pieces. So this is a big piece. Okay, these are little pieces. Okay, this is a larger piece. So you can guess what this is, right? This is going to be my backing. All right, that's my backing fabric. And then this one is another little piece. So if I look at the picture that's in here, okay, inside your kit, you're going to have some instructions on what you're going to need, how you're going to put it together, how to bind it. Okay, so this is your stitch and flip is what we call it, which is really just quilt as you go. And then this is how to bind it. So you want to keep track of these papers, and then you want to go watch the videos again, because watching the videos will definitely help more so than reading the instructions. Okay. So this little paper too, you want to keep track of it while you're sewing this thing, because this is going to tell you what it's going to look like and also what sizes your strips are. Okay, so when we pre-cut these strips for you, you're going to get some larger strips, and then you're going to have to subcut some of them if you want to. You do not have to, all right? But this is important to remember. And we can also look at this picture and figure out which one is going to be our binding. So if I look at these fabrics, I'm totally going to get my coffee. Hold on. Take a little sip. Let's see if I can put it over here so I don't spill it. All right. Try not to lose our microphone. Okay, so if I look on here, I can see that this one here is going to be my binding. So I've got, this is my middle. This is my little strip. Here is my little greenish strip. Excuse me. And then this is going to be our binding. Okay, so I can see that just from looking at this, and I can also see that this yellow strip is going to need to be cut in two. So is this guy, because I've got two pieces here, but only one piece here. All right, so your binding strip, we're going to set that to the side because we're going to deal with that tomorrow. All right, we're not even going to cut it today. I'm just going to set it to the side. We'll deal with it when we get there. Okay, and these pieces, we're going to cut these in half. We've got another piece here. Goodness. That is a wider one as well. Okay, this one's going to get cut in half too, okay, to become these two pieces. All right, so this paper, we're going to keep track of this so that we can sort of maintain control over which fabric is going where. All right, this kit is the Ear for You Snow. We also have it in blush that I wanted to show you that uses this fabric for the mane. Okay, which is super cute. So this is sort of a non-gendered version, and this is a little bit more girly. Okay, super cute. So it's called Ear for You is the kit name. So anyway, super cute. All right, so you guys ready to get started? Are there any questions yet? Okay, we're good? All right, so let's get started. So I've got my fabric. So here's my backing fabric, okay? And then here is my middle fabric. I'm not going to do anything with those. I know I don't need to do anything. These other fabrics, if I look at my pieces, I can see I've got 2, 2, 2. So all of these need to be cut in half. When we have them cut in half at the people who do our kits for us, we ask them to cut it a certain size, and then we give them a little bit extra. So we ask them to cut it just a little bit wider than what you need. So it's really up to you if you want to cut them to exactly the right size. So like on here, this is my elephant. It tells me on here it needs to be 6 inches for that strip. Okay, so I can see my elephants here, 6 inches. It needs to be 6 inches. I will bet you this is closer to 12.5 inches. Shove things around. Oh, look at that. It's closer to 12.5 inches. Because we asked them to cut it a little bit bigger. So to make it exactly 6 inches, you can cut it down, or you can just cut it in half. Okay, so generally speaking for classes, I just have people cut it in half because it's faster and easier. You are welcome to do whichever you would like. I'm just going to cut it in half because it means less cutting for me. And as much as I love Cuddle, the Cuddle dust is not my favorite part. So I do less cutting, and I do cutting that will make it a little bit easier to deal with. Okay, so this one, we're going to cut this in half. I know it's 12.5 inches, so it needs to be about 6 1/4. And this is a hard thing for people. So if you're a quilter, you're used to being very, very finicky about your measurements. So if something is 1/8 of an inch off, we're in trouble. And here we're 1/2 an inch off, and I'm like, it's no big deal, it's fine. But that's the way it works with Cuddle, okay? And I'll show you why as we go. But I'm just going to line this up. My ruler is 6 inches across, and I'm just going to shove it over a little bit so it's about 1/4 of an inch larger. I'm not even going to measure it. I'm going to mark or look here. So come zoom in here. So what I'm doing is I've got the fold here, and I'm lining this up with the line on my ruler so that I can get this line really straight. If I end up doing it and I line it up against something else and it gets cockeyed, what will happen is you'll end up with a slight V right here. So we're going to just try to get it lined up really nicely on that line. Okay? So there's a little tip for you. All right. So then I'm just going to cut that in half. Okay, so this is one of our digital cuddles, and it's a shorter nap. So you can see there's not a whole lot of mess here that comes off with it because it's such a short nap. So that's one of the things, is the longer the nap, basically the more messy it will be. So anything more than a 3mm nap, which is our Cuddle 3, I'll use the blade to cut with, and we'll do that in just a second. I'll show you. Okay, but that's the regular Cuddle. You can see not super messy. Just going to swoop it over here. Okay. So normally when I'm working in my studio, I'll actually take it all the way outside, but you guys don't want to just hang out here while I go outside and shake stuff. So I'm just going to do it in my studio and I'll vacuum it up later. Okay, so I've got these 2 pieces. I'm going to put them, these pieces I need to cut. These are my pieces that are ready for the quilt. So I've got my backing, my middle, and 2 strips now. Okay, so now I've got this piece. And this one is one of our Luxe Cuddles. So this is a longer one. Okay, so this is that same one that's on the back. And it is longer. So I'm going to cut this with the blade. All right. I'm going to find all my tools. I've got a plethora of tools here today. Okay, so I'm going to measure this just for good measure. Baha. Okay, so it's just a little bit over 10 inches. So I'm going to cut it just a little bit heavy at 5. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark it first. So I'm going to find the 5-inch marking on my ruler. And I'm just going to pull and tug this to be at 5 inches. All right. So Cuddle lets you kind of manipulate it quite a lot. And sometimes people are afraid to, but really you absolutely can. Okay, so I'm just going to mark that. Whoops. With my Sharpie. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and continue marking down here at just a little bit over 5. Oops. Okay, so now that I've got that marked, I can cut it. All right, so here's the trick. We talked about this before. This is the Olfa blade. It's the SAC1 something something. It's a snap-off blade. And it's really great. Some quilt shops have it. Definitely art supply stores have it. You can find it at different places. There are some shops we're going to talk about later that have our supplies. But if you're a shop and you're out there and you have this guy, if you would post about it, that would be awesome. I'd love to get this into more people's hands. But really, it's a lovely combination of an X-Acto knife and a box knife. Because it has the nice sharp point, which I like, and then it also has snap-off blades. So if my blade gets dull, I just pop it right off and keep on going. Okay, so we're going to do this. I'm going to start here at the top, and I just keep a little bit of pressure on it because I want to drag this down and let it just open up. Okay, so it looks like I'm pushing really hard, and I'm actually not, because I'm just trying to get it. And you can see I keep it pretty parallel. I'm going to turn this so you can see how close to the fabric it is. So I keep it very close to it instead of pulling it up like this and dragging with the point. I'm actually trying to get more of the flat part of the blade to do the cutting than just the point. All right, and I'm just going to do a little bit at a time. Once I have the line drawn on there, I can move it. Okay, as much as I need to, I can just move it around. Do you want to put the camera down and go? Okay. We had a light go out, so we're trying to figure out what happened there.
I heard it pop.
Oh, is that what happened? Oh, the pot, it popped.
Yeah, it popped.
Oh no, guys, we're out of a light.
Alright, we can still see you.
Good. All right, well, thank God we've got these daylights that actually are pretty nice right above. They're very nice right above me that help light up this place. So, all right. All right, so you can see I have a little bit of mess, not too terrible. I'm just going to swoop that up just a little bit. If you have a wet washcloth, this works really well to get that up. I'm just going to swoop it right off. I'm going to take these and give them a shake. So whenever I'm doing the shake, I try to do it so that it's somewhere that it's not going to be up in my face. So there's some, I don't know if you guys can see the fluff, but there's some up here. But I do try to shake it so that it's down, so that most of the cuddle dust will go down and not be on me so much. If you are doing this and you are getting frustrated with how much fuzz is like flying around with you, one, do it outside, do it in a separate area, don't do it near your machine, that sort of stuff. But also, if you just wash your face with a wet rag, it will actually take that stuff off. It'll collect the cuddle dust. Because one of the things about it is because it's a polyester, the more you rub your face and try to wipe it off, the more it sticks because of the static. Okay, so insider tip there is if you just wash your face down, it'll be much better. Okay, so now I've got 2 strips of that. I'm going to do the same thing with the yellow. Okay. Put our little rubber bands over there. This is the same, except it's a little bit narrower. So this one should be a little over 5. Yeah, 5.5. Okay, so this one, it says on the pattern, it says that I need a 2.5-inch strip. So I could cut this to 5 and then cut it in half, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to cut it a little wide. Okay. So 2.5 is this line on my ruler. Okay, and I'm just going to cut it a little extra. Okay, and this one, I can see, so this is one of the times that I will cut it, I will fix it, because if you look here, you see when this got cut, it got a little bit funky. And so it's really not, it's not straight right there. So I'm actually going to straighten that up first. Okay. And I'm going to mark it here, and then I'll cut it with my little blade. You can totally cut this with scissors. It's a little bit harder with the blade, but I'm just trying to keep less mess in here. Okay. Because those little extra bits, when they're too far off, they will, they just become like visually distracting. And they're hard to get. Okay, so now let me see. So 2.5, and it was almost 5.5. So I'm going to bump it up to 2 3/4. Okay, and then I'll move this up. Do the same thing again. And I'm just measuring. If you can see, I'm measuring the raw edge of the fabric right along my 2 3/4 mark on the ruler. That's how I'm measuring that. Okay, so sometimes we get people who want to measure 2.5 inches like this, and then like this, and like this, then push them together. Don't worry about it. Just use the lines on your ruler, and you can get 24 inches, which is a lot further. So, okay, so now I will cut this guy. I'm going to do the same thing. Start up here, drag it down. And you can see it's just way less messy than using a rotary cutter. So if you've done this with a rotary and you've been frustrated, this little blade trick is a good one. We've got, let me see if I can find, here's this one. So this is the tool we talked about the other day. So if you've got one of these, you can do the same thing, okay? But you're going to want to push it forward with your thumb. So I sort of push it forward and then hold it in place with my thumb, and it's a little bit easier, okay? I can drag that down. So the only thing that's not as nice about this one is that it doesn't have the snap-off blades. Okay, I feel like it's not quite as sharp as the other one, but also it's, you know, it's handy if you've got it. Okay, so same idea. All right. All right, so we're just going to drag this down the rest of the way, and then we'll have all of our pieces cut out for the front. All right, so there we go. So you'll see in certain places it'll kind of tug, it'll keep together. Just pull it apart or give it a little snip with your scissors. All right, so now I'm going to take these over here, give it a little shake. All right, so now we've got all the pieces cut. All right, so what do is we're going to start with the back because it's a quilt as you go project. We're going to start with the backing and the batting, and we're going to put those together, and then we'll start putting the strips on. Okay, so I'm just going to shove these to the side. Those are all my strips and stuff, and I've got my backing and my middle strip. And then I'm also going to look at the picture because I'm going to want this. I'm going to want the next color, okay, or the next strip. So I'm going to want the yellow strip right here. So I'm going to grab my yellow strip too, bring that along with me, and then we're going to put this all together. We'll get it started, okay? So let me move all of my cutting stuff, give myself some room here. Okay, I wanted to let you know which batting I'm using, so I wrote it on a little post-it so I wouldn't forget to tell you guys. It's the Quilter's Dream Poly. You can use any sort of batting in it, but the polyester is really what I prefer, and this stuff is really nice because it's super duper thin, okay? So you can see it's really thin batting, and really what it's doing for your project is giving you some stability. Because we're sewing two knits together, it'll make it much easier if you have this in the middle. I have some samples that were left out on the road when I came back from this last trip, and they haven't made their way back to me. But you can actually do it without fabric, without any batting in it, or you can do it with a cotton middle instead. I prefer, if you're just learning, to use either the piece of cotton or that Poly Request batting. It'll make a big difference in making it easier to sew with until you learn how to work with the fabric a little bit more. Okay, so that's the one that I recommend. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to lay this sheet out. All right. And what I'm doing is I'm making a little spray area for myself, and I just use a sheet. Okay, I have a few of them that I use just for this type of project, and I just use them until they're a little bit sticky, and then I throw them in the wash, and they're totally fine. All right, so on the package, it'll tell you on the 505 spray, because we're going to spray this baby, it tells you that it needs to be dry cleaned to remove it. And what I have found is that you can wash it and it will have no stickiness whatsoever. I've used the same sheet for dozens of classes where we have lots of people making quilts, and the sticky just washes right off, okay? So when it says it on the back, don't panic. You don't actually have to dry clean it. Probably to remove all traces of it, you might have to, but honestly, I just throw it in the wash and it's absolutely fine, okay? The fabric will not shrink. So Cuddle is 100% polyester, and so that's why we want to use a poly batting. Okay, so because it's polyester, it's not going to shrink at all. It's not going to go anywhere. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to lay down our batting. Okay, and I'm going to figure out, there's my long way. Okay, and I'm going to lay this out. When we do this this project in classes, we always do the tiny one because we're trying to share so much, like such a compact space with so many people in a classroom, that we're always trying to like use the smallest one possible. So today is a little bit bigger. When we do a larger one, you'll see like it just takes up more space because we need to lay them out. All right, so I'm going to start here, and I'm going to get my batting out. Okay, as much as I can. I can't fit this whole thing onto the table, and because I can't reach all the way over here, so I'm going to keep it here. And then I'm going to put my fabric right on top of it. Okay. So I've got this here. I just used, as you can see, I just used a hunk of batting. It is not cut precisely by any stretch. You do not have to. I just suggest that it's at least as big as your fabric. A little bit bigger is fine. You can totally use your big scrap of fabric, like if you have the crib size or you have a twin size, you can lay it out on here, baste it on, and then trim your batting, and that totally works too. Okay, and sometimes that's easier than trying to cut your batting to the right size first. Okay, so once I've got my fabric on here, I get it all nice and flat. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to start basting it. So in the patterns, it'll tell you to use freezer paper or parchment paper. Really, you just want to use any scrappy paper that you don't mind ruining, because we're going to spray baste it. So we use this paper. I put it right under the edge here. Okay, the point of this is to keep it from when I'm spraying it, that when I spray, it's going to hit this fabric. So this, you know, it's just my extra stuff that I'm going to wash out, and this backing. I don't want to get the front of my quilt, because if I get the front of my quilt, it's going to stick and it's going to get dirty the entire time I'm working with it. Generally speaking, it'll wash right out and it'll be fine, and it won't stain your quilt, like the dirt that you're using, you get on it from working with it. But I figure better safe than sorry, and we're going to keep the spray off of the quilt. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to use our spray base. We're using the 505 spray. It's totally the one I recommend over anything else. We get a lot of different ones in classes. I'll tell you that. And this is the one that is the least smelly and the best stick. Okay, and the smell is definitely a thing. So if you've used spray base before and you were like, I hated it, it was so stinky, that's why, okay? Because you were using a different brand, it stunk, because some of them do. This one does not, and it's great. Okay, so the way that I'm doing it today, because I'm in my studio, we have a small area that I can work within. So I'm closer to my machine than I would ever have anybody else be. Okay, so when you're doing it, do it further away from your machine so you don't accidentally spray it on your machine. I have a lot of practice, so I know I can get it on the fabric and not on the machine. But I will suggest that when you do it, make sure that you're doing it someplace separate. So generally speaking, I like to cut in one area, spray in one area, and sew in one area. And that keeps the mess from getting too much in different places and keeps you from getting, basting spray on your machine, which you don't want to do. It'll wash off with soapy warm water though, okay? Okay, so then what we're going to do is we're going to use the spray. One of the things to make sure that you remember is that you are not trying to spray paint this, you are trying to baste it. Okay, so anytime that I tell you you're going to baste it, this is what I mean is with the spray baste. Never with stitching, just with the spray baste, okay? But we're just trying to get it to stick down just a little bit. We're not trying to adhere it forever and ever. Okay, now here's the trick of it, and this is kind of the fun part, is you get to smack it, because that's what gets it to stick. Okay, so a lot of times people want to push it, and then what happens is it stretches, and then as soon as you're done, it will unstretch and unstick. So you don't want to do that. You want to just pat it down. Okay, so I always say it's a good time to get rid of any of those pent-up frustrations that you've had. Yeah, just start using that. Get out your anger. Okay, because then the whole time you're working with this soft, yummy fabric, you're going to feel better at the end anyway. All right, so now I've turned it around. Okay, you saw that. I'm going to lay this back out again as much as I can because I'm working it a bit at a time. Okay, so I'm going to pull this back. And what I do is I kind of fold it in half. I'm going to bring it back, bring it back. So that's why it's covering the stuff that I did. You always want to keep it on the table. So if this is starting to fall off, I can roll this up a little bit more, get it all onto the table. Okay, because Cuddle is a knit fabric and it's heavy, so it starts to fall off the table, and especially if you're working with a large one. This one is 30 inches wide. Each of these strips are half of the regular width of fabric, but if you're making a large like Crazy 8 or a Fab 5, you're working with the entire 60th width of fabric. Okay, so it gets much larger and much heavier. Okay, so make sure that you're keeping it on the table so it doesn't drag off. So then we're just going to spray a little bit more. You'll notice that I spray the back of the fabric and not the batting, and that's just, I found that it sticks better that way. Okay, so now's the trick is I'm going to stick my hands underneath here and I'm going to roll this up. Okay, I call it swimming when we're in class. You're going to swim it up, and it seems to work really well. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing, fidget a little bit until it sticks. I can feel it start to stick to the batting. I'm going to stop. I'm going to spray a little bit and push it up some more, and I do this about 6 to 8 inches at a time. Okay, so I'm working really hard not to stretch it, but to actually just roll it up. Okay, all right. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing. So I just shift it. You can see I'm just going to move it, get it so I can reach it. Don't be afraid to move your fabric. Just get it back out flat before you start working with it again. All right, so there it's sticking again. I'm going to spray baste again. Okay, roll my hands under it, push it up. Okay, tell you, it is kind of fun. Okay, spray a little more. We're just going to keep going. We don't want to do too much at a time because it can start to fold in on itself, and that gets frustrating. So for me, a lot of the things that I do, I'm doing it to prevent myself from having to kind of fix things later. Okay, so for me, if I do 6 or 8 inches at a time, I'm not going to have it folding in on itself. If I try to do a 15-inch stretch at a time, it tends to want to fold in, and then I have to unpeel it and fix it, and that's not as much fun. Okay. So I'll move this back again so I can reach that very edge. Like I said, don't be afraid to move it. Don't feel like you have to reach super far. It's not good for your back. and you'll end up hurting by the time you're over, and we don't want that. Okay, so now I've got just a little bit more, and then it's that last one. Okay, and I'm going to show you guys. So what I do is I'm sticking my hands right underneath this fold, and I just sort of push up and out. Okay, that little movement I have found works really well. So if you can get that movement, you'll be doing really well. Okay, like I said, we call it swimming it out. So if you're ever in a class with me and I tell you to do that, you'll know what I'm talking about. Okay, so then because I'm at the last strip, and if I spray this, I'm going to get the front of the, or the back of the quilt. I'm going to get the front of the fabric, and I don't want to do that. So I put this back in there. I'm going to spray this one more time, and then we're done with that part. Okay, because I'm not spraying a lot, this could unstick a little bit while we're working with it, and that's fine because we're going to go back and we'll just spray base some more and stick it in there. I would rather use too little and have to go back than to do too much at the beginning, mostly because it can really get overly sticky. Also, I will totally admit that this stuff is not super duper cheap. Generally, it's about $20, I think, for one of these cans. I can get at least 4 of these little quilts out of it, though. Okay, so for me, that's worth it. But I've seen people use half a can for one of these quilts. You do not need to do that, okay? So you can get at least 4. So then it makes it totally worth it. All right, so now I have to figure out which way my quilt is going to go, top or bottom. All right, so this is where we figure out the nap. All right, so at this point, if I pet it this way, it's nice and smooth. If I pet it this way, it kind of ruffles up. All right, can you guys see that all right? Okay, so this way it's nice and smooth, and this way it kind of ruffles. All right, so that means this is the top and goes to the bottom. So the first thing I'm going to do before I go anywhere with this is I'm going to write a big T up here for top. Okay, and now when I'm working with it, I'll always know which one is the top up here. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over because now we've got our backing fabric on there. So this is the back of our quilt. This is now the front of our quilt, and we're going to get that started. So the way that I do this is really just the quick and easy way is what I like to do. So it's not super precise. So if you want to be super precise, you can totally measure things out. I choose not to, okay? So what I do is I'm going to fold this. I'm going to keep the T on top because it's the top of my quilt and I want it up here, okay? So then I'm going to fold this so that my selvages, which I can see on this side, so you can see my selvages there, okay? I want this side to line up. I don't really care if that is perfect or this is perfect. I'm going to aim for this side to keep me fairly square. All right, so I've matched those. I'm going to get this. Okay. And Hawk, if you want to come around here, this would actually be a really great view for everybody to have it from this side, so that when you're working with it, you know exactly how it works out here. Okay, so I've got this folded in half. Okay, here's the backing fabric. Here's my T for the top, so I know that that is. If I turn it this way, so if I pet it this way, it's going to get confusing. So don't ever do that. Pet it, turn it this direction, pet it top to bottom. Okay, so now I've got that set up. Here's my fold, my center fold. All right, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick my centerpiece on here. So if we look at the quilt, we're always going to start with the center and then we're going to build out. All right, so we're going to put this center strip on here. This center strip is supposed to be 16 inches. I don't know how big it is exactly, and we're okay with that. So what I'm going to do, if you wanted to, that was my point, is that if you want to be precise, what you could do is you could cut this to 16 inches, you could measure up 8 inches here and draw your line, okay? And then you would have a line to line this piece of fabric up on. The way that I do it requires less measuring and isn't as precise. But for me, the point of working with Cuddle really is because I can be a little, I don't know, less precise, which is just nice. Like I love quilting. I love piecing. I really like intricate little piecing, but with Cuddle, I just get to be a little more free form. All right, so I'm going to line this up. So you can see I folded this in half. My fabric here, this elephant fabric, is directional. So this is really easy to tell that this is the top and this is the bottom. I don't have to pet this to figure it out. If you have a non-directional fabric and you have to figure it out, you want to pet it so that this is top to bottom. Okay, so if I pet it, this is smooth. And obviously, because I know that the elephants are going to be standing up. So, but if you can pet it, it'll go top to bottom. Okay, all of your pieces are going to do that. So I've got it on here, folded in half. I bump those folds up to each other, okay, so that I know that this center and this center are matching, because I folded the back in half, I folded the center in half. So here's my middle of both of them. All right. Okay, so now's the tricky part. This is where people sometimes get confused. So I'll do it and then I'll do it again. All right. So I'm going to open this up, and then I'm going to take and I'm going to grab the backing, the batting, and the front piece. Okay, I'm going to grab all three of those on either side. Okay, and then I'm going to do this thing where I was just say you palm it. Like you have to stick your palms down real hard. You're going to pick it up and lay it down. Okay, so now it's in place and I can work with it. I'm going to show you one more time because it gets confusing for people and I totally get it. Okay, so I'm going to fold my backing in half. Okay, I've got it lined up. Selvages are matching. I got my center fold there. I'm going to take my fabric. It's going to run top to bottom just like my batting tells me to do. And I'm going to fold it in half so that the folds are next to each other. Okay, so now I've got my folds that are matching. Okay, it's pretty close. It's all right if it's not perfect. Okay, sort of pat this on, make sure it sticks a little bit to the batting, because the batting works sort of like an old flannel board. If you ever use those like in Sunday school or something, that's what this always reminds me of. It kind of sticks to it. So I'm going to grab the batting, the backing, and the front strip on both sides. I'm going to grab it with my palms, lift this up, and set it down. Okay, when you do, just pick it up, put it down. If you've been in my classes before, I will always be like, put it down, put it down, put it down. Because people want to pick it up and then try to get it straight. Don't do it, okay? Just put it down, okay? As long as we've done that, it's sort of, you can see it sort of just sticks to it. I can move this around just a little bit at a time. I'm going to unfurl this, okay? And I'm going to get that all there. So there, I can see that my sheet is bumpy. So I can see there was a little wrinkle in there. Okay, so now I've got my centerpiece on, but it's not done because I have to adhere it, right? I have to stick it down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this, and I'm going to put this on here so that I can see where this was, so that it was pretty straight. Okay, if you've drawn your line, you know where it was, but I'm just going to use my ruler to give me basically a line to go from. All right, so I'm going to pull this back in half. And I'm actually going to pull this whole thing up onto the table, just the tiniest bit, because I want my whole center up there. Okay. All right. So now I folded this in half this direction, and I'm going to spray the back of this. Okay. This is one of the larger ones. A lot of times the middle strip is actually maybe like 9 inches, 7 inches. It's usually much smaller. This is one of the bigger ones. And so I'm going to spray the back of this. So like I said, normally I only do 6 to 8 inches at a time. This one I'm going to spray that whole thing, but I'm going to show you how I lay it down so it doesn't get caught on itself. Okay. Move my coffee out of the way. Okay. Okay, so now I've just got this tacked a little bit. I don't need it to hold really hard because I'm going to go sew it pretty quick. Okay, so then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick this up and I'm just going to lay it down. Okay, and I'm going to give it a good pat, stick it in place. All right, what happens a lot of times is people want to spray it and then they want to flip it. Well, as soon as you start to flip it and it touches itself, it grabs itself. Okay, so that's why I do that whole lifting and lowering it down. Works much, much better in getting it to not stick to itself. Okay. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing on this side. Okay, and get that stuck down. Now, should I have to reposition, I could just pull it up, put it back in place, give it a good pat. So having my ruler there makes it so that I can like put it back into place where it was, keep that line nice and straight. Okay, and now I've got my center strip basted on, and I've got my backing on. So now we're going to start pinning. Okay, so I'm going to lift this up because now I don't need this little sheet. I'm not going to do any more spraying for just a minute. Okay, so this is, if you're doing this at home, if you have an area that you can put that sheet out and then an area to pin and an area to sew, you won't have to switch between the two as much as I will today, okay? And that's all right. So I'm gonna move that. Okay, so now I've got my backing, my batting, my center strip, and now I need to put on my first strip. So what I do is I lay this out because I'm a very visual learner. I think a lot of us are quilters and sewists because we're visual people. And so I lay it where I want it to be, and then I give it a good little pet. Okay, make sure that that is all going the same way. If it's the wrong way, it'll sort of ruffle up. What I tell people is if you can't tell the difference, so if you pet it and you're like, I can't tell which way it's going, it's fine, then it doesn't matter because you're the one who's going to be feeling the quilt, and if you can't tell the difference, it's all good. Okay, so I'm going to pet it. This is the way that it wants to go. So now I need to pin it. So I'm just going to flip this right over. Okay, so now they're right sides together. Okay, I'm going to use my little clover pins. Ouch. Okay, and I'm going to pin this in place. When I'm pinning this, I'm going to start in the center. So I basically just lay it in place. Okay, I'm going to lay it where I want it to be. What I want, so come over the top here. What I want is I want to see a little bit of that backing fabric the whole time. Okay, so I'm going to pin this in place here. Okay, and I can see this. The reason I want to see it is twofold. One is that this is cut a little bit wide, so I've got some playroom with it, okay? And the other is that I want to make sure that I've caught that back strip the entire time. Okay, if I don't catch that back strip, it's going to give me a little pocket, and that's not fun, okay? So we want to catch that. So I'm going to look at it, make sure it's there the whole time. So I'm going to pin the center, and then the end, and then I'll go in between. Okay? And what I've found is that if I stab it and sort of pull it up and push it back out, that works really well. But don't try to put your hand under it because that doesn't work as well. But stab it in, sort of pick it up, stab it back out. Okay, so once I have this first row done, I'm going to do the second row, and I'm going to do this thing across all the way. Okay, so I'm going to, and you can see, you're going to watch when I do this, I move the fabric all the time and put it where I want it to be. So don't be afraid to pick it up and move it around. It will want to move on you because it's a knit fabric, because it's plush, it's got some thickness to it, it's going to want to do its own thing, and we're going to have to make it stay where we want it to stay. Okay, so I pin there, pin in between, and I'm just going to keep pinning. And like I said, I can see that little white strip along the top. I want to keep that there, and then I want to pin this as much as possible. Okay, so what I have found, and I'm pinning through all the layers, okay, through the backing too. What I have found is pinning this way helps the fabric stay in place as we're sewing, and it helps keep a lot of area flat. So especially when you're working with a really fluffy fabric, it will make a difference. This one isn't too bad, but we have a lot of thicknesses to go through. We got 2 good layers and then one fairly small one. Okay, so now we've gotten this pinned on, and we're going to go sew it. All right, so let's come over here. And I will sew. All right, make the machine wake up. Come on, little guy. All right, there we go. So I've got my needle in there. I've got a 90-14 stretch needle. I'm gonna take this out because it doesn't want my drawer to close all the way. So I've got a 90-14 stretch needle in there. I've got some Metler thread is what I'm using. They're Metrocene, which is a nice polyester thread, nice and strong, and it's just a medium gray. Okay, so even though my backing is like this saltwater color, I'm actually just using a gray thread, and I use it for almost everything. I love the gray thread. It just melds into basically anything that I do, and works really well. So I'm going to grab my okay, we're going to put this under there. I've got my my digital dual feet on here, okay, which is like a walking foot. And I put the open toe foot on this morning so you guys could see a little bit better. We'll see how it works, okay. I like the closed toe most of the time because it will hold more fabric down, but we'll see. I think this will be okay. All right, see if I can get in here and do this. So what we're going to do is we're just going to sew a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So a 1/2 inch is really about here on my foot, and I'm going to let this yellow ride along that line. I don't use this one, I use this one for my seam allowance. Okay, so that's what I'm keeping track of. This one doesn't have the markings that yours normally would. On a regular walking foot, you just want to use the edge of your walking foot. The edge of mine is 5/8, so I don't want to use that. Okay, and then I'm going to up the stitch length. We got it at 3, and then we're just going to start. So, oh wait. Is that in the center? Nope, there we go. I want to make sure I was in the center. I wasn't in the center spot. Okay. All right, so I'm going to take this pin out. The trick with this method is that we are going to be able to leave these pins in most of the time. Sometimes we'll have to take them out because I'll have done it too close. Most of the time, they're going to be able to stay there the whole time. Okay, so once I get closer, I'm going to take that pin out. Okay, and I'm just going to guide this through as straight as I can. Okay, the thing that I have noticed of anything is the slower the better. Maybe not super duper slow, but honestly, when you start going fast, even on a good quality machine, it will want to start buckling on you. Okay, so don't let it, don't think that you have to go fast, because you really don't. Because see, even when I speed up just the tiniest bit, you can see it starts pushing this top layer. Okay, so one of the things that I tend to do is I will want to hold it in the back and kind of hold it in the front and make sure that it's feeding through as straight as possible. Okay, so when it gets to a point here where I'm going to hit that needle if I'm not careful, I'll just take it out. Okay, your fabric will sometimes want to I don't know, hold on to the machine a little bit, so sometimes you have to help it just a little. I have had a few people who've used that, oh, the name escapes me now, Supreme Slider, I think it's called, where you actually, it has the slippery bits on here, and that seems to help on some machines that don't want to feed it through as nicely. Okay, so we're just going to keep on going. Whoops. Okay, make sure I'm not stitching over any of my needles or my pins. I'm just going to keep on going. So make sure that you're using, like I said, a walking foot. Keep a guide on it. This will be pretty easy the first strip, and as you get more strips on there, it will get a little bit harder to feed through. So I started at a 3 stitch length. If you are having any trouble with it feeding through, bring your stitch length up and change your presser foot pressure. Okay, so I'm going to take this pin and I'm going to move it now, okay, because I want it to stay. And I've got a little goob in my batting there, okay, and I'm going to put it here because as I take that pin out, now it wants to swing over to the left, and I don't want it to do that, so I'm just going to pin it in place so that it will stay there. Okay, and I'm not going to back stitch any of these because I don't need to. I'm going to end up cutting these guys off anyway. Okay, all right, so that works all right. Okay, so now I'm going to come over here. I'm going to collect my pins. All right. So now I've got my first strip sewn on. All right, that's the way it's going to look. It's going to be fluffy. It's kind of weird, but it totally works. All right. So if I turn over this side, you can see those stitches. Okay, and then it kind of slams it in there. This is that same thing where you can take your little stiletto later, come right over it, and it'll hide all of your stitches. So if your lines are not straight, you can absolutely hide it and no one will ever know. Look at that, it's like a little miracle. Okay, didn't even exist, didn't happen. All right, so what we're gonna do next, and you can do this in a couple of different ways. So there's a couple of different orders of operation that we can do, okay? So the way that I like to do it is we build from the center out. So we'll do the center, and then we'll do a strip, and then we'll baste. All right, you could baste right now, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew on the other yellow strip. All right, so you could actually do it. So you do the center strip, and then the yellow strip, and then I think it's the saltwater strip, and then the elephant. And you could totally build out this way and then do the other direction. What I have found is that I have an easier time keeping track of which strip is next if I do yellow, yellow, blue, blue, elephant, elephant. Does that make sense? So I try to keep it in track that way. if you're doing a very large quilt, it's really easy to get out of order and get the wrong one on, and then you don't even notice until the whole quilt is done. Then you're like, oh darn it, that's wrong. So I'm going to flip it around. One of the things that's important is if you are right-handed, you are going to always want to pin further away from you. If you are left-handed, you're going to do it closer to you. So if I were left-handed, I would be pinning down here so I can pin this direction. Because I'm right-handed, I'm going to pin up here so I can always pin this direction, because I'm going to sew this way. Okay, so it's just something to keep in mind. It will make it easier so that your pins just slide out while you're going instead of having to take them out early. Okay, so now I could put this on there. This is where I want the yellow strip to be. So I'm going to do the same thing, and I'm going to pet this. This is going the wrong direction, and I can tell because this is smooth this way and this goes backwards. Okay, I can also tell because the hair goes this way more than it does up there. So you can see this, it kind of falling this direction because the nap is this way. Okay, but I can also feel it. So I'm going to turn it around and pat it again. Make sure this is the top, because I can see those elephants, right? That's the smooth way. All right, so now I can flip it and pin it. Okay, I'm going to try to get it as straight as possible. Move it down just a little bit because I've got some extra wiggle room. So if I eat up some of that fabric, it's absolutely fine because I've got an extra 1/4 inch or so on each of these pieces. Okay. All right. Is everybody following along? No questions yet? Okay, so let me tell you, while I'm just pinning, since I already told you all about the pinning, I'm going to tell you a few of the shops that we that have a bunch of this stuff that I'm talking about today, a bunch of the supplies, the notions, and have some of our kits. Okay, so these are ones that we reached out to the stores, and if there are other stores that are on here now and you have the kits, you can totally post about it. But these are the quilt stores that I know, they reached out to me, that are shipping or have curbside delivery if you are local. Okay, so we've got Quarry Quilt and Yarn that's in Sandstone, Minnesota. Okay, and I know that they've got a bunch of our kits and the supplies, so the needle or the pins, the needles, the thread, 505 spray. Most of these stores will have quite a variety of them, so feel free to reach out to any of them. So Quarry Quilt and Yarn, So Much Love in Granbury, Texas. Okay, also Willow Tree Fabrics in Decatur, Alabama, which I taught at a couple of years ago. Had a great time. I loved their store. It's huge. So if you're in the northern Alabama area, check them out because they have a lot of good stuff. They have a huge embroidery area too. So I'll be back there eventually. I love them. The other one is Time Flies Quilt and Sew, which is in Negaunee, Michigan. I think that's how you pronounce it. If you're from Michigan and you know how to pronounce it better, you can tell me. I know they're in the UP. So they have a bunch of our kits. They have a bunch of supplies. Great shop. And they're going to be hosting a class later this year. Also Cali Quilt Co. up in Sacramento and the Missouri Star Quilt Company. They all sell our kits as well. And so does the Sewing Machine Shop in Walnut Creek, California. So any of those places have our kits or fabrics available and a bunch of the notions that you're going to need. So find one that's close to you and give them a call and see what they've got for you. All right. Okay. So I'm going to do the next strip. So you can see I've pinned this on. And now I'm just going to sew this next strip on. Okay. I'm going to get that on there. Get it in place. What I like to do is get it in place. I'll put my foot down and pull this pin out because I can see it's pretty darn close. I'm going to put my needle down. Make sure that I've got it all situated before I start sewing. All right. Now I'm just going to keep on going. So you want to make sure I can feel this is kind of pulling a little bit down here on the floor. So I'm or not on the floor because it's not quite there yet, but it's pulling down a little. So I'm going to pull it and get it so that it's up on the table more. It's really important when you're working with the quilts to keep as much weight off of your needle as possible. Okay, because we don't want it to fight this direction. We want it to just feed in nicely. So that means taking weight off of it so that it will just come through. Okay, and I'm just gonna Sew right along there. You can, if you're having a hard time eyeballing where a 1/2 inch is, I've definitely seen people take a Bic pen, or just a roll, what do you call it, a ballpoint pen, and draw your 1/2 inch seam allowance. Okay, once you figure out where it is on your foot, it's pretty easy to keep it pretty even. And you'll see sometimes I take out the ones on the left side, sometimes just the right. Okay, but you'll be able to get it pretty even pretty quickly. And I just keep an eye on where that needle is coming down, because I want the pins to hold the fabric for absolutely as long as I can let them. All right, because what happens is as soon as you take them out, the fabric can now do whatever it wants. And if you've sewn with Minky before, you know it definitely has a mind of its own. It likes to do all sorts of things that you might not want it to. All right. So I can feel there's a pin back here that I'm stabbing myself with as I'm holding it. So I'm just going to take that pin out. Okay, those do not need to stay in there the whole time. I tend to leave them and just take out the rest at the end. But if they're bothering me, I just take them out as I go. Okay, last one. Do the same thing. And then just sew to the end. Okay. Oops. There we go. All right, I'm gonna do the same thing, grab my pins. If you have not found the joy of a magnetic pin cushion yet, I'm telling you, they are the bomb. Okay, they're so good, especially when you dump your pins. It's the easiest way to pick it up. They have those little wands too that are like, like mechanics use them, and you can pick up all your pins that way too. But I love these little pin cushions. I have the Zirkle is the other one that I have here that I really, it's been loved and used for, I don't know, probably 10 years now, but maybe 8. Okay, but it is well loved. All right, so now I've got my strips on, and now I need to baste these on. Okay, so this is the thing that people get sometimes confused, because we're going to keep coming back to this. All right, I am going to stick these under there, and then I'm actually going to be lazy and not put my fabric back under there, because I don't want to have to keep moving it. So I'm just going to put a little bit of scrap paper on either side here so that I don't spray my board. Okay, so normally you would have this set up in a different area where you could have your spray basting just set up and just keep coming back to it. All right, so you can see on here I've got it all done. If you look at my seam is not perfect by any stretch, but you know what, that when we flip it over and we baste it down, you're never going to be able to tell that I wasn't perfect. Okay, so we just want to hide our imperfections. This is how we do it. So you can see I didn't spray a lot. Okay, I'm going to push this up, and then I just give this a tug and stick it down. Okay, so one of the things, because it's a knit fabric, it wants to roll, and you can see it wants to curl this direction on me. Okay, so if I just give it a little tug, it's going to go into place where I want it to be. All right, so I just give it a little pull. All of this is an area too that we can take our stiletto to, fluff that up, okay, make it look nice. All right, and then we're going to do the other side. Oops, ripped my paper. All right, so now I'm going to baste on this strip. Okay, so this is the technique that I do. Like I always say, you figure out what works best for you. What I figured out is what works best for me, and then I teach that. And that you can do it differently. So if you want to go one direction and then the other, you totally can. I just like to do the back and forth, and I like to pin and then sew, pin and then sew, and then baste it. Okay, so we're going to do that for the next strips as well. Okay, so the same thing, I'm going to push it up. Okay, now I want to show you guys something. So as I was telling you, you can take your little stiletto. So you'll notice the way that this is, because the nap is running this direction. Okay, this is my top to bottom. These get stuck in there really well because the nap is going that way. Okay, so this gets stuck in because it's coming this direction. Does that? I hope that makes sense. Because back over here, you're going to see that mostly, it's a funny little nub, that it's come this way, and we'll only have a few areas where we'll actually need to scratch it up because it's actually coming this way. So we've just caught the end of it right here. okay? So it's a different look, and you can sort of, once you work with it a few times, you'll figure out how to tell if your strip is on backwards. Okay, so if your strip is on backwards, if you get to this point and you've sewn it on and you've basted it, and then you're like, oh my gosh, it didn't work, it's wrong, it's going the wrong direction. Or sometimes you get like 6 strips in and then you're like, oh, I did it wrong. Don't worry about it, okay? If it really bothers you, you can totally take it out, and I'll show you how to do that. But you can just leave it. Most of the time, it really doesn't matter. The only time I will really suggest that people take it out and redo it is if it's directional. So if you got your elephants upside down, I'm going to suggest you take it out and fix it. But most of the time, it doesn't matter if your nap is going the wrong way. Okay, so it's really just a good thing to try to get to happen. Is your nap all going the right way? If it doesn't, it's okay. All right, so I'm going to take a look at my picture again, make sure I'm doing the next strip right. So I'm going to have this saltwater color is the next one that I want to do. So I'm going to grab one of those guys and put that on the exact same way. So we're just going to keep repeating this until we get this whole top done, okay? So I'm gonna keep working on this. Are there questions? Does anybody want to know anything about Cuddle fabrics or Luxe Cuddle fabrics? Happy to answer the questions. Otherwise, I'll just keep making stuff up. But if you got questions for me, I'd love to hear them, okay? So I'm gonna do the exact same thing here. Pin it in the middle, pin it in the end, pin in between, then do a double row of pinning. Okay, and if you're new, if you haven't been here the whole time, you weren't here at the beginning, make sure you leave a comment with your city and state, because we're going to be giving away a kit. Okay, we're not sure exactly when it's going to be able to be mailed, but we will get winners, and we will send you something before too long. Okay. All right. Just going to keep on pinning. So one of the things is people like to just do the one row, and that doesn't work very well because it doesn't hold it down all the way. And the other thing is people will want to pin this direction. So you pin perpendicular. And I will say that sometimes you can get it to work, but usually when you're working with 2 Luxe Cuddles, it's best to do it this way. They just tend to move a lot. That pin can go away.
Dead soldier.
Yeah, this one too. Look at these. I think I might have used these a little more than I should have. Okay, that one looks like I actually hit it with something, like a needle. Oopsie.
Oh, shout out from Hawaii.
Oh, hello Hawaii. Nice. Do we have any Australians today? We had some Australians the other day. That was pretty fun.
Yeah, we have a woman, Ciara, I think is how to say her name, from the UK.
Nice. Thanks for joining us from all over the place. This is great. Okay, so I got this all pinned. I'm going to sew it, and then we'll do the next one. All right. So I'd love to hear if you have a Cuddle kit in your stash, how long you've had it. I've seen some pretty old ones out there, actually. You might not be surprised that people hold them in their stash for a very long time. But once you have figured out how to do this, you're not going to have to. You're going to be able to do this. Make yourself some blankets. Get started on those Christmas presents early. Oh, look at that. This is like a new achievement for me. I'm so excited when I can just thread it immediately. I tell you, first thing I'm doing when this quarantine is over is getting my needle threader fixed. I didn't realize how much I loved it until I have to thread the needle by myself all the time now. Okay, I can feel this wants to tug. Anytime that your fabric is tugging at you, just stop and fix it. Okay? Don't think that you just have to keep shoving through.
Margie's had her kit for 2 years.
2 years. It's not too bad. Which kit do you have, Margie? Is it a big one? I like it because a lot of beginners, they buy the biggest one first, and then they're overwhelmed with it, which I understand because those big ones are big. They are really lovely though, and like I said, if you guys are interested in it, we can totally do one because it's the same procedure, but there are definitely some different maneuvers that have to be made when you're making a 60 by 80 quilt out of Cuddle. Okay. Also, if you were here yesterday, you probably heard the knock at the door, and that was a new embroidery machine. So we're going to be doing some embroidery tutorials as soon as I can figure it out. Or maybe we'll just figure it out together. So I'm pretty excited about learning how to do some embroidery on the Cuddle fabrics.
Leslie says she brought her 2 kits 5 years ago.
Nice, nice. 2 kits because you were like, I really want to do this, and then they just sat there. But now you got 2 quilts to make, so I'm excited. Okay, I had a lady in a class once, and she told me she just took her kit out every year, gave it a good pet, and put it back. And she'd had it for, like, 8 or 10 years or something. She'd had it for a long time, and it just always intimidated her. It's very funny. All right, so we're going to keep on going just to the end. I'll hold that one in place this time. Cut the thread. Take it out. We'll do the next one. Okay, so like I said, I'm going to do pin, and we'll baste it again. Okay, just a few times. As you might, I don't know if you could see from where the camera is, onto the table as I'm sewing. Okay, and that's really important, especially when you're working with the larger ones. So if I have this, it starts to want to fall off. Okay, so as I'm working with it, I'm actually just going to keep it up on the table. Okay, and I put as much onto the table, just fold it accordion style, get it small here, and then you can put your next strip on. It can become very frustrating if it just keeps falling off the table. So take advantage of that ability for it just to stack up. You also want to keep it always in an area where you can reach it comfortably with your hands and not have to lean too far to get to it, because it really will make your back hurt. Okay. What are your thoughts on using flannel as a batting? You totally can. That's a great question. You can absolutely use batting as the middle. Just make sure that you can use flannel as the batting. And you can absolutely do that. All you want to make sure is that you have pre-shrunk it. Okay. I always say it's a great place to use that flannel that you've had since 1984 that you bought. It's probably hunter green. Never used it. It's a great place. Wash that thing up. Wash it in some hot water, dry it, and then use it as your batting. What I like about that is, especially when you're doing larger kits that have areas that are not quilted. So on this one, you'll see that we have a middle section that is not quilted. So this whole middle section that was, whatever it is, 16 inches, is not going to be quilted. And so if I were to give this to a baby, I would definitely want to quilt that area. You could do some, like just around the motifs or whatever, because otherwise the batting is going to fall apart. It's the only reason that we quilt it at all, really, is to keep the batting from falling apart. Because that will happen over time. So if you use flannel, or if you use just a solid cotton, you don't have to quilt it at all, because it won't fall apart. Okay, so flannel is a great idea. It's nice and soft, it's easy to sew, and like I said, most of us have some in our stash that we've had for a while. I know I bought a bolt of it at a shop once because it was on sale. I'm sure somebody there understands. Yeah, it was a great price, so I bought 15 yards. I didn't know what I was going to do with it, but look, I've used it on the inside of quilts. I've also used, you can use the flannel, it's totally tangential, on that new little Cuddle book that we have. So I don't know if you guys have seen that at all, but we have a new, and it's out, the video is on YouTube on how to put this little Cuddle book together. It's just a soft book that is made with Cuddle, a panel. And I used flannel in those pages, and it worked really well. So yes, absolutely. In lieu of batting, it's great.
When you're working on a big quilt, do you ever work on the floor? Yes,
100%. Yes, I think Hawk can vouch for me crawling around on the floor putting the batting out. Yes, so on the large quilts, absolutely laying it out on the floor or on a big table is great. If you've got a couple of 6-foot tables, so can they see how this is on the table? So I've got almost all of the quilt over here up on the table, and it's just going to feed around, and that way it takes the weight off this front, so it's not pulling out of the machine. Okay. But But yeah, if you've got a couple of 6-foot tables or the 8-foot tables, those little pop-up ones we can use for potlucks and that sort of thing, those work really well. And if you put 2 of them together, you can lay your entire quilt out on it. Okay, so if you're going to do a few of those, I really recommend using those big tables. You can use your kitchen table, the floor, whatever. You just need to be able to get it flat, and that 60 wide is especially not difficult, but you know, you got to look into how to get that out flat a little bit more. Most of us don't have tables that will fit all of that. Okay, so we're just sewing along here, more 1/2 inch. Okay, and as I go, like I said, I'm gonna keep a hand in the back. I describe it as sort of guiding. You're guiding the fabric through the machine, sort of like you would walk your child across the street. You're not going to pull them, but you're going to give a nice little, you know, nice little hold. Okay, so I'm just kind of guiding it, because what happens otherwise is it wants to go other directions. So it'll start to spin sort of on me. It'll head left or head right. And so if I just keep a hand in the back and a hand in the front, I can keep it going exactly where I want it to go and not lose track of it. So you'll see I keep those pins in as long as I can. Really, if anything I can recommend is using those pins to keep things in place. And don't be afraid to overpin. Normally I tell people to pin as much as they think they should and then pin twice that much. Okay, the pins really do keep things in check. All right, just make sure you keep a good eye on them so you're not running over them. Okay, same thing happening here. I'm going to pin that there, come off the end. Okay, all right. Okay, so now I've got those 2 saltwater ones sewn on. Okay, I'm going to go back over here. I'm going to take my pins out. Okay, we'll swish that over. We'll see that's going to work just fine. It's a lovely little color combination. Okay, this is the same. This is where I can see that my nap's going to have to get pulled out to make it look nice. Okay, but in the end, that's what you do after the whole thing is over. It's one of those little TV projects that you can have, is, you know, when you're watching all that Netflix, be scratching out the nap. Okay, so I'm going to put these under here again. The same thing one more time. Okay, with my little cheater strips here. Okay, so like I said, if you're doing this at home, you're going to want to do this so that you can just have an area that you spray. But you know, it's special circumstances here. Okay, and I really don't want to spray my board. If you do, if you spray your board, if you spray your machine, you just want to make sure that you wash it with warm soapy water. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go ahead and push that up. Okay, give it a good little tug. Make sure it stays in place. People ask me sometimes if you can do that without spray basting, if you could just flip the strip up and then do your next pinning. And you can, but I'll tell you what happens is that it wants to curl backward. Okay, so at the end, when you've put them all together, what ends up happening is that you have basically little mole hills along your quilt. So along here, this will sort of hump up. Instead of coming over here and being nice and flat, it'll stay like this, and so then you have these little humps, which isn't really the look we're going for. So we just use the spray base, just use a little bit, and you can see I'm not using hardly anything at all. It's very little spray based. Okay. It's probably one of the things that the put it down and the stop, that's what they hear a lot in class, because people love to overspray. So try to use less and not more. Okay, all right, so the next thing that we're going to do, let's see if I can reach the phone. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to put on our next strip. One I want to show you is, so we are using back to the Cuddle fabric. All right, so straight. Oh, okay. This is another question. That's what we're trying to get to. I'll answer that as I do my next part here. So, that's all right. That's all right. We'll figure it out. Okay. So thanks for being patient with us, you guys. I appreciate it a lot. Okay. So one of the things that happens when we're doing this is that when we're putting this next strip on, I can see, because this fabric, the nap is going all the way over here. So in actual, the back of my fabric is here. Okay, and my nap is all the way over there. All right, so the backing is here, the fabric or the nap is here. All right, so it is quite a bit longer because it's coming off that edge. When that happens, you can totally just swish this back and look at it, find it, and then put it down. On some of the longer naps, you can actually like put it down here, and then I sort of swoop it back and make it so that it all comes back. This one is not so necessary because it's not that long, but like with the llama Cuddle, see if I had something. I don't have anything right here, but on some of the longer ones, you'll want to swoop it back a little bit. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to pin this down. The question that we got that somebody had asked was, are the words minky and cuddle interchangeable? And I get this question a lot, is are they the same thing? And the way that is the easiest to understand it is that minky, spelled M-I-N-K-Y, is a kind of fabric. So it's a substrate, all right? So it's a type of fabric like denim or cotton or canvas, that sort of thing. It's just a kind of fabric. And then Cuddle is our brand name for it. Okay, so you will find other minky fabrics. In fact, I have a really great example right here. Okay, so this is one that I picked up that is not our brand. And I'm going to see. So this is comparable to just a Cuddle. So this is minky from a chain. I won't tell you which one. And this is our minky. So you can see the difference between the length of the nap. Okay, so you can see this is much longer. This is 3 millimeters. This looks like it's probably just 1. Basically feels like glorified flannel is really what it feels like. But it kind of has a odd plasticky feel to it. And this is embossed, but the embossed doesn't really show up so well because it's such a short nap. Okay, so that's part of the difference. The other is that the color is vastly different. So let me see. So this is our red. Okay, and this is the other brand's red. So this is the chain stores one. Okay, so you can see the brightness is different. Okay, the other thing is that these will be a lot stretchier in all the ways than ours. So ours is only stretchy in 2 directions. Okay, width-wise. All right, so minky, that was a long answer to a short question. Minky is just a kind of fabric. Cuddle is our brand. So you will find minky at other stores. You will find them at all of the chain stores, but it is not our minky. Okay, so all of ours will have Cuddle at the end of the bolt. It'll show you that that's what it is. And we work really hard to make the best minky that's out there. And so that's why we take pride in using our name for it, because it really is a better quality. And they work really hard to make sure that every time that it comes from the factories, that it is the best that we can get. And so we haven't been afraid to, ask them to make it a little better. And we will keep making that quality for you guys, because it really does make a difference. A lot of times people have worked with minkies before and they've been really frustrated by them. And then they work with Cuddle and they realize what a difference the quality makes. It's the same with your quilting cottons. The stuff that we can find at the quilting shops, at your local quilt shop, is going to be better than the stuff that you can find at the chains. It's just the way it is. That's why we want them to keep on going. All right. Okay, so now come over here and sew this. All right. All right, if there's any other questions, pop them up. I just got one more strip after this. Okay, so you can see I've got it all up on the table. The longer or the bigger it gets, the more fabric I get on here, the heavier it is. I've got it at a 3 stitch length on this one, and it works beautifully. If you are not working with a high-end machine, which I totally understand, you're going to want to probably start at a 3.5. If it's struggling a little, feel free to open that up. So open it up to a 4, 4.5, 5 if you need to. It's not about the number, okay? It's about getting it to move through your machine. The other thing that you can do is to lighten the presser foot pressure, okay? So as this starts to curl up a little, I just slow down and shove it underneath there. Okay, if it starts to build on me a little, and we'll talk about this tomorrow when we do binding, I'll show you some ways, but I can use that little stiletto of mine and just sort of make it go under there. Okay, if I hold it in place, it'll go under, which works just fine. And because Minky is so forgiving, the Cuddle will just, you know, it'll just hide all of your little goofs, which is why we like it. Okay. So you'll notice the difference in sewing this, that this wants to push forward more than the Luxe Cuddle. Before I was sewing a layer of the yellow Cuddle to the Luxe Cuddle to the saltwater Luxe Cuddle. And they sort of, for lack of a better term, they just work better together. They work nicer because they're both thicker. So this one I have to just sort of make sure that that flatter Cuddle is staying where I want it to, because it wants to push forward a little bit because it's sitting so high up on the other nap. Okay, take that pin out. Okay, and if you're sewing along and it starts to get a little bit difficult, make sure that you're not stitching over anything that's come underneath. That happens more often than you would think, is that people will try to accidentally stitch down more layers. So you can see this wants to kind of curl this way, and I'm going to keep having to shove it back and keep it where I want it to. All right, so don't be afraid to do that. Make it stay where you want it to stay. Okay, we're going to come off the end and do that whole thing over again. Okay. All right, so now we've got that end done. All right, so I'm going to show you one thing here. Okay, so I've got that on there. So this is going to flip up like this. Okay, this is longer than that. Okay, I don't know if you guys can see it very well. I can feel it. The edge of my front is here, so it's about a 1/2 inch longer. Okay, that's because I didn't really take care to make sure all of my measurements were perfect. And the reason I do that is because it doesn't matter. So my theory is that if this strip at the bottom is 4 inches instead of 5 inches, it doesn't matter. It's totally fine. For me, I'm just going to trim it up at the end instead of trimming it at the beginning. So it's really up to you, but that will be something that happens, and it happens in every class. Okay, is that one side will be longer than the other. We're just going to even them up. Okay, so I'm going to sew this last strip on. I'm going to put it, so this is my top, right? This little line in here is from it being folded. This should come out just fine in the wash, and that should unfold a-okay. All right, if it doesn't come out as nicely as I want it to, my theory is that it's still just as soft, so it's all right. So I've got this in the direction I want it to. I'm going to verify. I'm going to do a little double check visually to make sure that my elephants are sitting in the right direction. Okay, and then I'm going to flip this over. Okay, so this one I can see there's a little hump in here. What can happen is if you get a large hump, like this one just wasn't cut perfectly straight, but if you end up getting it, you've sewed it a little bit wonky, that's okay. We can fix it. And the way that we'll do that a lot of times is I will just make a new line. So I'm going to draw a line. I'm not actually going to use it, but I'm going to, well, I guess I can right there. I can show you guys. Take that little hump right off. Okay, so what I could do is if this were more off, this would be more useful, I guess. Okay, but I can see that's where my line is going to be. So if I line up, and I would do that all the way across, but if I line my piece up with this now, it's going to be straight and I'm not going to follow this curve. That happens a lot when you're first starting to learn how to work with the fabrics, is that you'll get some real wonky bits, and that's okay because it's still soft, it's still yummy, and every time you sew with it you get a little bit better. Okay, so I'm going to use that as my straight line. It'll get this back to where it's supposed to be, nice and straight. Okay, when you are doing a larger quilt, that can really start to happen. And when we get that, if you get the middle strip on slightly crooked or with a little bit of a hump in the middle, we call it smiling, but by the end it's almost like a rainbow. It can really bend. So you have to be careful to make that not happen. So this is one of those ways you can sort of, yeah, put it back to where it belonged. Just draw a little line. And that Sharpie pen is totally going to hide in your seam allowance, so it doesn't matter if it's there. Okay, and yeah, you'll never see it again, so it's all good. Okay, and this double pinning, I don't know if anybody out there can attest to it, but yeah, has there been some?
Talking about it right now.
Yeah, the double pinning makes all the difference. It really does. Of anything that I have learned in the classes from watching so many people sew with it, is that makes a huge difference for people in being able to wrangle the fabric. So if you take the time, oh, don't let me forget, I have to show you how to unpick a seam just a little bit, okay? After I sew this one, we'll do that, and then I'll fix it. But if you, oh no, where was I going with that? If you have to unpick, oh, what I like to do is I like to pin it a lot at the beginning, and then I don't have to fix things. And really, like I've told you before, I don't like unsewing. I don't like having to fix things. So if I can pin more at the beginning so I don't have to do that, all the better. Okay. All right, so I'm going to do this one more time. I just noticed my little blades, and I put them down here for if I needed to replace my rotary blades. One of the things that happens when you are sewing with Cuddle is, this is something that happens a lot for people, is that when they're cutting it, it gets shoved down into their mat, okay? So, yeah, if you've had that happen, raise your hand. Where you've gotten like the little ridge of Cuddle fuzz shoved into your mat in this nice little line. Okay, if that has happened to you, the reason that happens is because your blade is not sharp anymore. Okay, so if you are having to push extra hard or go over it twice, please replace your blades. All right, of anything I could tell you is replacing your blades and your needles frequently will make your sewing so much easier. All right, but if your blade is a little bit dull, what happens is you're shoving a little bit harder, and so then you're shoving all of that nap into your board. All right, if that happens, you can sort of scratch it up with your finger, take a like a, what do they call the little sponges with the scrubby bit on the back? You can use those. You can use a washcloth. It'll come out, but the biggest thing is just to prevent it by replacing your blade. Okay, they're not that expensive, and it's totally worth it. Okay, I use those endurance blades in a couple of mine. So if you guys have seen those, they're a bit more expensive, but they do last much longer. They're definitely worth the money. Look at that, went right in between. Okay, and you can see my first pin is, I don't know, 1/4 of an inch or something away, and then that second row is another 1/2 inch or something from that. Okay, I'm going to fix that pin because I can see, oh, that's why. It's because it's a curvy pin. Let's stick that back in there. Okay. We didn't talk yet really about the pins, but I'll show you guys when I pull this out of here too. The difference with the pins, so I have a few different brands of pins. The ones that I prefer are the clover ones. These are the red and pink ones here, and those other color ones that I have, they're almost all clovers. And they're just really sharper, nicer pins, but I'll show you the difference between these two that I'm using. I'm using 2 different kinds today because they're just mixed up on my pin cushion right now. And so I keep flip-flopping between, but I'll show you what the difference is and why I like them. Okay, cut my thread, take it out. All right, so now take this over here. So let me show you the pins really quick while I'm thinking about it. Okay, so there are a couple of different pins that I have. I'm gonna grab others. Okay, so these two are the clover ones. All right, you can see, if I turn that over, you can see how far the pin part goes into the head. Okay, this is a different brand, and you can see how far the head does not go into the pin. Okay, so I'm going to show you. So right here is where this one ends. Right here is where that one ends. All right, so way different. All right, this got another at least 1/8 of an inch on here. So if you've bought flower head pins and the heads keep falling off, that's because you have this kind. Okay, these are the clover ones. These are great. I really do love them. This is a different brand. This one is a lot harder. It's a much thicker. I mean, you can hear it does not bend at all, which sometimes I find helpful and sometimes I find unhelpful. So those I'm a little bit pickier about with which ones I use. Okay, these guys are two different kinds, and I don't know that you can tell really on here the difference. Oh, you can, I think. The difference on the width of the pin itself. Okay, so this one is bendier than this one. So if I take this, I got like sticky on my fingers, I can bend it. You see that? I can bend the pin a little bit. Okay, which I like pretty well. It helps me get through the cuddle really nicely. This one doesn't really bend at all. Okay, so I have to like really shove it right there, and then I can bend it just a little. This one I can bend really good. Okay, so these I like for almost everything is what I use. They're pink on one side, red on the other. Okay, these come in a little card of pins. This one comes in the box, so it has like a little box that has this and the yellow and the green, and then also that orangey color. Yeah, that's one. Oh no, I put it away. So there's one also that's the coral or whatever color. Okay, so the box that comes with these colors are a little bit harder than these. Okay, so there's your info on pins. I'm definitely, anybody who comes to my house gets a whole bunch of them because I think that pins are really important. They can make your sewing so much easier. I put the bent one back and now I can't find it again. Darn it. I'll find it, I'm sure I will. Okay, so I'm going to pull these pins out. Okay, and now I wanted to show you one of the things on how to take the stitches out. Okay, so what did I do with my blade? There it is. Okay, so I've got my blade and I've got, okay, so these are your two tools for being able to take your stitches out. Not that anybody's ever going to mess up, but every once in a while I do. So maybe, you know, you'll be like me. So this one is called a Kai seam remover. All right, lots of shops have these. They run about $5, $6, $7, I think. It has a little blade in here that is covered by little plastic bits. I used to tell people that you couldn't cut yourself with it until I did, and so then I realized you can. So be careful with it. It's not super dangerous, but you can actually get your skin caught into those, so don't do that. But it does make it much easier to take things out. So all I do is I stick it in here. I'm going to open it up so I can see my stitches, and then I just take it in here and I just sort of scrub it. Okay, and it cuts those threads, pops them right out. All right, you do not, I repeat, you do not want to try to come in here with a little seam ripper and try to pop those threads. These are almost impossible to see, even though this is gray on white. It just sinks right into the fabric. So go between, okay? If you have the little blade, you can do the same thing, and I pop the blade out, hold this open, and then just pop the stitches. You can see I don't even have to hit the stitches. I just hit, you know, somewhere near it, and it breaks them, and then they come right out. Okay? That. Let me fix that real fast, and then we'll finish up the quilt. Okay, if there's any more questions, let me know. We'll be back tomorrow at 10 o'clock. We're going to do the binding. So if binding has been something that you have really been freaked out about, I'm going to take your fears away. It's really not too bad at all, and it's the softest thing ever. Okay, I really love Cuddle bindings. We'll talk about using them on cotton quilts as well, and different kinds of fabrics that you get, different kinds of Cuddle that you can use for the bindings. All right, so now we are here. Move my stuff again. Okay, this is my last strip. So I'm going to do the same thing. So this one, look at this, guys. So this one, the back is about 1 inch bigger, and down there, the front was about 1/2 inch bigger. So this happens a lot in class. I don't care. So it doesn't bother me at all. If you want to be very precise, you need to find the middle, measure it, blah, blah, blah. In the end, it doesn't matter. Okay, and I just want to reiterate that it's really not an important thing. What we're doing is we're making a really soft blanket, technically a quilt. And that's the important part, is it's just really soft. And then we get a good quality. You can be pickier than I am. It's one of the things that is, yeah, some people really like and some people don't. Okay, I just like to be a little bit chiller about it. All right, so now I'm going to take my basting spray and I'm going to spray down this row. A lot of people ask if they have to sew down or baste down the end one, and we do, okay? So we're going to push that up, get that all in place. Okay. All right, and I'm going to turn this around and do the same thing with the other end, because like I was saying before, what I like to do is I pin and then sew and then baste, and then I'll baste both of these at the same time. Okay, cover up my front so I don't get any glue on that either. Okay, when you're done with this, when you're done with your little blankets, always make sure to wash them too. Because one, it'll get the sticky off that we've put on there, so the basting spray will basically wash out. And then the other thing is that it just gets rid of any of the chemicals or anything like that that are in the fabric or the batting or any of that. Make sure that you wash it. When you're washing these, you're going to wash them in cool water with a low heat dryer or no heat. Let them tumble around for a little bit. I like to not let them dry completely. Hang them up to dry the rest of the time, and then throw them into the dryer for a little fluff. All right. Okay. So now that's my scrap paper. As well, you can use parchment paper or freezer paper or just extra scrappy paper, any of that sort of stuff. You can just use whatever paper you have laying around, newspaper, whatever. It doesn't matter. You're just going to throw it away in the end. Okay. So now I've got my whole quilt pieced together. All right. The entire thing is quilted. Okay, so now we're just going to square this up. So I'm going to square it up, then I'm going to take it outside and shake it. I'm not going to take you along for that part, but I will show you how I square it up. Okay, there are a couple of different methods that you can use depending on how perfect you want it to be. You can guess. I don't really care if it's perfect. Because it's soft. But there are a couple different ways that you can do this. So one is using a quilting square, basically. Okay, quilting square ruler. All right, what we can do is we line it up on the edge so that I can get a nice square. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll look on here. So this is 5 inches here that I can see. That's gonna match up. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna move my ruler over here. I'm gonna line this up on this seam that I just did. Okay, so I know that's going to be pretty darn square. I can make it square from there. I'm going to come down here and I'm going to look at what I've got here. So this one, this little dot, 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 dot line is just about 1/4 of an inch. Okay, I'm going to shove it just a little, move my fabric. Look at that. I can move it a whole lot. Okay, now I can get it clear down to that 1/2 inch. Okay, you see that? So now I know that it's pretty square. I'm going to cut it off here, and that was just a lucky guess where I laid the ruler, because this is my shortest one. Okay, so I'm just going to whack that off now, and I'm just going to cut it. So this is where I would normally, like through Luxe Cuddles, we're talking about I usually want to use a blade. When I'm doing this squaring up, I just use the rotary cutter, but you can see it's way messier. So as I shove this around, I'm going to start making a really big mess. Okay, but I'm going to try to move it as little as possible. So when I'm moving it, I'm not picking it up and shoving it. I'm just gently moving it to the side. Okay, so now on here, I'm going to come along here, and I want to take my ruler so that it barely comes off the end here, but covers a lot of what I already cut so that I can continue that line straight. Okay? Okay, and I'm just going to cut that off. Oops. Okay, now I've got this, and I'm just going to move that gently to the side, because every time I lift that, more cuddle dust is going to come off. Okay, so I'm going to try to shove and gently move as much as possible. Okay, so at this point I can come around. Oop, there it goes. Okay, and I can cut this side off. So this is where I'll stick this ruler back on here. Okay, I know the other one was about 1/2 inch shorter than this, so I'm going to turn this. So if I do 5 inches, that should work on the other end. Okay, if I get to the other end and it doesn't, I'm just going to come back here and trim it a little more. All right, I'm going to run this so that it goes right along that cut edge of mine. Okay, and then I'm going to cut this. So now let's see if I can get these both out here. Okay, so I've got that lined up against that edge. I've got my 5 inch right along my seam line, and I'm going to put the 5 inch line of this ruler right along that seam line as well. Okay, so you saw I just picked up the quilt, I just move it, I make it go where I want it to go. Okay, because I want that to run right along the 5 inch line. Okay, so my seam is at the 5 inches, and that's where I'm going to cut it off. Okay, so when you're doing this, you want to make sure that you are holding down your ruler really tight, and that you are just walking your fingers up along it and holding it all down. Okay, if you try to start at one side and then just run it all the way up, your ruler is totally going to shimmy, the fabric's going to slide, because it's got some depth to it and some slide. So it's going to move on you. Okay, so now we've got that done. I'm just going to keep going the entire way around. So I'm going to finish this up. I'll finish this up tonight, and well, I'm going to finish it up now, but I'm going to finish this up, give it a good shake outside, get rid of all of that cuddle dust, give it a little vacuum, and then tomorrow we'll be back. So join me tomorrow at 10 a.m. Okay, and we will do the binding. So I'm going to talk you through the binding. I'll have a couple of other little samples to show you of how the binding works with different stitches and with different kinds of fabrics, so you can choose what you want to do. I'll show you a couple of little quilts that I've done that are cotton quilts that have cuddle bindings, so you can see the difference there. We have a winner, if I can find my phone again. Okay, so for today's winner is Cindy Kozelka of Hutchins, Wisconsin, and we will get you a kit. So one of us will reach out to you through messages. If you see the if you see this now, if you're here, Cindy, let us know, and we will reach out to you, get your mailing address, and send a kit to you as soon as we can. Everything is a little bit wonky right now because of the quarantine, so so be patient with us. We'll get you something, I promise. If you have any questions, we'll be back again tomorrow. Like I said, tomorrow is binding, so anything that you have been wondering about, how do I do binding, what kind of fabric do I do, is it really raw edge? It really is, and we're going to show you all sorts of stuff and the best tools for using that and for making a really lovely cuddle binding. Are there any other questions that I need to answer?
Can you tell us the brand of that stiletto again?
The stiletto is the By Annie. So you probably know By Annie because she is the one who does all those bag patterns with the soft and stable. That's her product. And so this is the stiletto that she uses for those bags, which works great. And I think that's actually why I originally bought it. And then I realized that it actually works amazing for cuddle. So, so this is my favorite. You can find them all sorts of different quilt shops and from byannie.com themselves. So, all right. So is that it? All the questions?
Yep.
Okay, good, good. Yeah, be back tomorrow at 10 a.m. Pacific time, and bring your questions, comments, all that good stuff. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you next time. Happy sewing.